I'm really happy to see you, and especially for me, to see some people I haven't seen here in a while, and some people I haven't seen in a long time. So with that, a very loving Sai Ram and a welcome.
Sai Ram.
Very nice. You know, I'm going to take a little time because I see that we have a few people that have been here before and a few people that haven't been here before. And if you'll notice the sign, you might know that First Sunday meeting has been making a little bit of a transition in relationship to the theme of welcoming newcomers, and it's all about love. I think tendency is, having been with Sai Baba, like many of us had, and we forget to note that Baba's words have always been the most important to come for the last ones to come, because they were being first introduced through the teachings, and that's, I believe, our job and opportunity to share the experiences we've had with Satya Sai Baba, and that's the purpose of the First Sunday meetings. Many of you know Elsie Cowan started these way back in the 70s, and at every time she would invite somebody to speak, they would speak about their experiences with Satya Sai Baba. And you're probably going to just hear from me a little bit more. My good brother in the audience is there, says sometimes I talk too much, so if you please excuse me and accept my apologies. I might do it again a little bit, because I think it's important to review every now and then the purpose of First Sunday meetings and what we're trying to do. I honestly not too concerned about how many come, but as Swami says, it's the quality that comes, and those that do come are here because he's brought them. And that to me is everywhere. We have a wonderful speaker today. Most of you know him. We'll talk about that later in a moment. But I like to first start by playing a quick DVD. This was made by Bob Becker, who spoke here a couple months ago. He came from Connecticut because he introduced our speaker in December. And while he was here, he said, I brought my video camera. If you would like, I would like to introduce some people. I said, fine, go for it. So a couple days after the meeting, a few were at the book center, so he interviewed 8 or 9, and for at least 3 hours of interviews. From this interview, he made this 8-minute DVD, which in my heart really explains what the book center is all about from the day that it was established by Sri Satya Sai Baba, I think, in about 1972. Would that be correct, Rita, Bob, about that time, and Mary, about 1972? Yes. With that, would you play it, please? You will. Always says, be happy. Make other people happy, and you can be happy yourself. The secrets of living are becoming a lot easier if we want them to do, and that's a good reason why John is here today, is to help us to dive into the secrets of how life can be always happy. As you know, Sai Baba has said many times, the world is perfect. If you want the world to change yourselves. And as we're talking a little bit, it's not just he. All the masters say the same thing. Take one step towards God, he'll take 100 towards you. The secret is the willingness to take the step. That's not always easy. But once you take the first step, it is easy. Rita, would you like to do the reading? And then I'm going to say a few more words before introducing the speaker. Thank you.
Sai Ram, I offer the fruits of this reading at Bhagwan's feet. The reading for today is taken from the February Sanatana Sarati. Eternity extends before man. Space too is horizonless, but life is very short and unsure. Therefore man has to make the best use of these years allotted to him in the world and try to become one with the Absolute. so that these entrances and exits may be ended. That is his dharma, his duty. He has to do this for himself. Know that dharma, live according to its dictates. That is the meaning and purpose of life. The Almighty, who has made creatures to evolve into human beings, has come down as man whenever he forgets or ignores his basic duty. The sages of India, through the process of purifying their intuition, discovered this fact and sensed the message that these incarnations bring, that the avatar carries. Many times in human history, avatars have come and awakened man. This is a splendid chance to fulfill your human existence, the happiness that you hope to derive from kith and kin, from wealth and fame, are pale in comparison to the bliss that resides in the spring of your heart where God dwells. Try to contact the spring. Go to that very source. Be centered in God. Ananda springs only from truth. Truth will reveal itself when the heart is saturated with love. Man's nature is fundamentally truth. His blood, fundamentally, is tolerance. The heart teaches compassion, awe, reverence, and humility. These qualities bind man in love and turn him towards righteousness, to his source, to the sustenance of the universe, which is God. Every deed must make man nearer to the goal. It must be a step in the pilgrimage to God. It must cleanse his emotions, correct his attitude, clarify the path, and cooperate in his consummation. This has to be the constant care and vigilance to every seeker of bliss. Sairam.
Sunday meetings. It was mentioned in those words that Swami says, purifying the heart. There are many methods of doing that. We have with us a speaker who's written some books, Purifying the Heart, Practice Purifying the Heart, all words of Satya Sai Baba. I've asked his permission to say a few words in relation to that because I did dive deep into his books, plus other teachers who say the same thing, starting from Satya Sai Baba, who uses various instruments for the following: reflection, reaction, resound. I would like to add that we are with the Book Center. If you want all the answers to anything, read Satya Sai Speaks and all the Vahinis. That's all you have to do. But we don't. We want to go other places. But the answers are there. Many times he's used reflection, reaction, and resound. Many times, not just once. Many times he's talked about embodiments of love. In fact, before every single discourse, he starts with embodiments of love. Why are we scared to say embodiments of love? I don't know. That is a mystery to me. I don't understand it. For me, it's easy to look at any one of you and say, you are an embodiment of love. Why? Because God says so. I don't need any excuses. I really don't. I look around and all of you are that. But why don't we have the courage to say I am the embodiment of love? I didn't do that until not too many months ago. I got the message, I guess I'm one too. I was embarrassed to say that. But you know what I found out through an experience? We say, you have to love others to love yourself. Well, I had that all backwards. I thought I had to love you before I could love myself. It doesn't work that way. I finally came in a dream very vividly. First, you love yourself. But what happened was, I split the word. First, you love yourself. Bammo! There's only one self. There isn't two, there isn't three, there's only one. So if we can open our hearts and get rid of the coverage that's over where it came from, doesn't matter, and you love yourself, you're automatically going to see love in everything. You can't avoid it. We know in this Satya Sai Speaks Baba said over and over again, all the masters, all the avatars, no matter who you follow, doesn't matter, it's the same thing. They keep pounding us to get to the gold which is inside of us. We're all gold. Why it got covered up, I don't know. And you know what? We don't have to know. That's what's so great. When we realize we don't have to know. They're mistakes. That's all. Reflection, reaction, resound. You've heard me say this. I think it's important that we repeat it because it's fun. Once you can get into this reflection, reaction, resound, it's honestly fun. At first, it's not easy because it's fearful. We're afraid. Fear is a natural thing, only we use it wrong. I remember, and it was, Rita mentioned it, this avatar came not to protect the righteous, not to destroy the evil, for transformation. This is a quote from Satya Sai Baba. This isn't Bob Bazani. This is nobody else speaking. This is so neat when you can quote it. I came for transformation because all of us were tainted. Were we sinners? No. Were we whatever? Doesn't matter. He came to us for transformation through the process of reflection, reaction, and resound. Other people have used Phyllis Crystal, you use gazing, you use everything. It's all reflection, reaction, and resound. John will talk a lot more about this. I was fortunate enough in my first trip to see Satya Sai Baba to grasp the word. Is if you see something that you don't like, just accept the fact that that's a reflection. It's a reflection. It's a reflection. And once you can grasp that, then your reaction will begin to change. Because you've dive deep inside to say, how am I going to react to this? What I saw, what I thought I saw, was something I did or didn't like. Satya Sai Baba has always said there's more good in the world than there is bad. Dive in to see the good. And pretty soon, you won't see it more bad. It won't happen. It won't happen. Reflection, reaction. What is your reaction? I think you all figure that out. What are you going to react to reflection? You're going to say it's his fault? You're going to say it's your fault? Or what are you going to do? Resound. That's the mystery. For many, many years and many, many times I asked people for the word resound. Very difficult to explain. And I really couldn't until, if you remember this last November, December, we had the 6 sisters here who were sat in the laps of Elsie Cowan way back in the early 70s and the 60s, where their father would take them to see Elsie in Tustin, and they would sit around. One of them explained resound, and it is so true. It is so true. Your reaction to a particular whatever, good or bad, doesn't matter. The resound is like an echo. She described it as like being in a canyon, and your words go bounce around, and they always come back. They always come back. So your reaction is the resound. So if you're going to come back with a negative attitude toward a thing, that's the karma that you're bringing into yourself. That's how karma comes about. In Satya Sai Speaks, there is always the argument of will. Do we have free will or don't we have free will? There's that argument's going on and on and on. And Satya Sai Speaks, and this, it's so interesting about avatars and masters. They repeat the same stories over and over again. The story of free will that Swami describes is that we come in, we're like a horse on a tether. And that tether's in the ground, and that horse can go around and around so far to do what he wants, eat what he wants, and do anything. That's the amount of free will that we have when we come in to Earth. on each. But we're here to learn and to go beyond that karma. Yes, there must be some grace involved. But on the other hand, he says, take one step towards me, I'll take 10 and 100 towards you. What is that step? And you can break that tether. He will allow that tether, actually, I should say, to get longer. You're not going to break it. He will do that at the right time. But he allows you to dive deep into yourself, to realize, to learn to love the self through reflection, reaction, and resound. That pretty soon, all of a sudden, that partner, that person you've been working with, whatever you see in the world, they too are embodiments of love. It's a wonderful game. It is a game. The first couple of times it isn't. You don't want to hear the bad things about yourself. Not what someone else tells you, even to yourself. You don't want to admit it. But once you do, the fun part is you look forward to the next one. Because even I, this little simple soul, can say, God will never give you more than what you can take. That sure pushes you to the limit, though. But really, he doesn't. We push ourselves to the limit. Nobody pushes anything. Nobody causes trouble. Nobody causes anything. We bring it upon ourselves. All suffering, nobody else caused you to suffer. These are all true words. And I know John is going to speak to us. I think some of you know he's done some divine seminars and he's done a lot of consulting with people. And tonight, today, this afternoon, he's going to speak to us about, I would guess, it would be purifying the heart. I hope, right? Okay, good. You got that part right. The rest of the program, not necessarily right. In case you don't know, I'm Dick Selby. It says so right here. That's not a bad name, but I didn't play volleyball as good as he does. Thanks, Dick, for the introduction. Is it okay? You have more words to add?
Why don't I mention Connie's shot at the very end?
Okay.
Let's do it at the very end.
Sure. He has some words to aid about gazing, which was wonderful. And by the way, we do have some tapes of Connie's talk here last time for those who are interested. Again, I would say welcome all. Welcome people who haven't been the first timer, and I'm welcoming so many good friends that I haven't seen in a while. Okay, John, we moved the podium back. I think there's enough light on it here now. Welcome, and please.
It says here, it is all about love. Sai Baba has always emphasized love, as I'm sure virtually everyone here knows, if not everyone. Well, why does he do that? There's a particular reason for doing that, and I want you to hear his words. He says, love is the royal road to reach God. No other path except the path of love can take you to God. Love is the only bond that can unite all and make us realize the one reality behind all the seeming diversity. Love is God. God is love. God, who is love, can be realized only through love. And he summarizes this in the version of the love all, serve all. Well, if you're like me, sometimes your heart may close to this person or that person or to that event. And what do you do then? Well, as Bob has prepped us very carefully for, reflection, reaction, resound can be extremely useful here. In fact, it is the most powerful teaching, if you really understand how to apply it, about how to purify your heart. So, I wrote in the flyer that Sai Baba's teachings tell us how to heal relationships and heal your heart. So, what are these teachings? No surprise here, they have to do with reflection, reaction, and resound. He says, try to understand that everything is reaction, reflection, and resound. Whatever you speak, it comes back to you as resound, as Bob was saying. It's just like an echo. Everything comes back. because as we'll get to in a moment, there is really nothing out there that's not you. He continues, similarly, your actions come back to you in the form of reactions. Whatever you see your own reflection. The external world will reflect your thoughts. If you view the world with love, it will appear filled with love. If you view it with hatred, everything will appear antagonistic to you. What you think is outside is only a reflection of your inner being. And here's one that, these are all Sai Baba's words. He also adds, the faults you see in others are but projections of your own. Now, people sometimes have difficulty with this. Suppose you encounter somebody whom you really react to with distaste or anger or hatred or any of the heart-closing kinds of reactions that are possible. You say, there's no way that that person could possibly be a reflection of me. I don't do what that person is doing. How could that possibly be true? And so it's easy to then dismiss it because I don't do that. It's this awful person over here that does that, or that group, or whoever it is you're closing your heart to. So how can you do that? How can you understand how to apply this in a way that might make sense? Well, it helps to realize which part of you is objecting to this. And it is the ego, or what I call the false self. The false self will never believe that what's out there is a reflection of you. The false self is immersed by and actually sustained by dualism. Is Sai Baba here to teach us dualism? I don't think so. He's here to teach us Advaita. He's made that very clear. So this teaching is a help to understanding who you really are, which Sai Baba has made very clear. And I have a nice quote here somewhere, which I'll find. He says why he's here. Baba says, you are my life, my breath, my soul. You are my forms, all. When I love you, I love myself. When you love yourselves, you love me. I separated myself from myself so that I may love myself. My beloved ones, you are my own self. So as Bob was saying, what's out there is all Sai Baba, and it's all you because you are Sai Baba as well. And the way we can come to realize this ever more fully is through applying reflection, reaction, and resound. So how can we do this? How does that actually work? What you can do is, okay, there's somebody who, let's say, is appearing to reject you. Say, well, I don't do that to people. I'm very nice to people. I would never act that way. The way that you can kind of get the teaching of this most easily is to realize this is something that I don't do to other people, but where do I do it? Most commonly, it's something you do with yourself. So if you experience someone out there rejecting you, and you react to it by closing your heart, this means that in some way you're closing your heart to yourself by rejecting you. You might do it with other people, but generally it's easier to say, how do I do to myself what I see this person doing to me? That's the easiest way to uncover what it is that's out there that you're reacting to. If something's happening out there that you have no heart-closing reaction to, there's no problem. And of course, the easiest thing is to see Sai Baba and you say, unconditional love, that's in you too. That's a reflection of what's in you. It's everything. So the next step would be, once you understand that, okay, this is about me, what I see out there is how I'm closing my heart in some way, how can you discover that? This sometimes can take a little work, but if you persist and you actually believe that this is what's happening, you can do it. Is to find the thoughts by which you, let's say in this case, reject yourself. How do you criticize or put down or belittle or whatever the particular word might be? How do you do that to yourself? Whenever you find what those thoughts are, then you can see what that thought is, feel the effect of it. Because if you have some kind of self-criticism, push yourself down, there'll be an effect. Actually, your heart will close. If you're very sensitive, maybe you don't even need to be that sensitive, you'll feel something in your heart center. You'll feel some closure, some contraction, some pain. As Baba says, love is expansion. And identifying with the ego as contraction. He says it a little differently than that, but that's the message. So let me give you a couple examples about the kinds of common reflections and how you can identify them. Let's say, if you close your heart to someone because you experience this person as cruel, discover ways that you are uncaring toward yourself or others. If you criticize someone as being intolerant, notice what you do not accept about yourself. If you close your heart to someone who has ignored or disparaged you, discover how you do the same to yourself, belittling yourself in some way, closing your heart. If you judge someone as deceitful, discover how you deceive yourself or others. The part of you that does not believe this is the problem. And as I said, it's the ego or false self. The reason it does not believe this is because it is actually, let's say, the foundation of dualism, the illusion, Maya. And the ego is trying to preserve itself. Love dissolves the ego. Unconditional love undoes the ego totally, and you realize, as Bob has said, you are the embodiment of love. You are the love that is Sai Baba. So the ego is trying to hold on to itself and will give you all kinds of reasons why it can't possibly be true that whatever it is you're thinking you might be doing, because you've seen it out there and you say, it is a reflection. And I'm reacting by closing my heart. The ego says, no, that's not it. It's okay, you're okay. It's those people. And so it's so much easier. That means you don't have to deal with something the ego really doesn't like. Some kind of part that says, I can't possibly acknowledge that I have that part of me. That's the place which takes a little courage and a little faith. And it's important because that's where the teaching happens. Once you realize it's not out there, it's in here, then you can do something about it. For example, if you've ever had let's say a husband or wife or a child or something, and you're going to say, okay, they need fixing. There's something wrong with them. They're not being as loving as they might be, or this and that, and you try and fix them. The results are not likely to be pretty. People don't respond nicely to being told something's wrong with them and you need to fix it, and I'll tell you exactly how to do it. People don't like that much. So what can help then is it's in yourself. You can do something about it. You're in charge of it. If somebody else, forget it. So that's the good news. The lovingness that you experience out there is in you, and once you accept that and begin to look at it and find how you create it, you can do something about it by finding the thoughts that create that and learning to let them go. That's possible, and that's how you can purify your heart, using reflection, reaction, and resound. I've got a nice quote here from Sai Baba. I always like to use his words if I can. It's a summarizing quote of reaction, reflection, and resound. He says, "Whomsoever you see, there is God in him in the form of Atma. If you hate someone, it amounts to hating God. Therefore, do not hate anyone. Do not be angry with anyone. If you hate someone, you are in fact hating yourself. Similarly, if you abuse someone, you are abusing yourself. Every human being is a mirror. You see yourself in the mirror. There may be many mirrors, but you see your own reflection in all of them. Everything is reaction, reflection, and resound." I wrote wrote in the flyer that I would share with you Sai Baba's teachings about disease, which also have to do with reflection, reaction, and resentment. Sai Baba says about the cause of disease, diseases are the products of the mind, not the body. Man's thoughts are the root cause of his sickness. Illness, both physical and mental, is a reaction on the body caused by poisons in the mind. An uncontaminated mind alone can ensure continuous health. So fill your hearts with love. You will then be free of all afflictions. When the heart is pure, man will be free of disease. Now, for many people, perhaps most people, understanding that disease is a reflection, just like the ones we were talking about, can be a big step. It's difficult to realize my thoughts, some that I'm probably not even aware of, are somehow creating this disease or affliction from which I am suffering. So it can be very hard to move in a place where you can look at disease somewhat differently than let's just go to the doctor and see if I can get this fixed. So Baba is saying poisons in the mind are the root cause of disease, and to remove this cause, we must fill our hearts with love, and then we will be free of all afflictions. Believing that love alone can heal can be a little difficult. It sounds fine, and of course it's true. Or you wouldn't say it. It is true if you've ever tried this out. But it can be difficult because you may think, well, if I'm doing this, that means I'm to blame for this, and I don't like that at all. And again, who's speaking here? It's the ego. The ego says, no, I'm not going to take that blame, this judgment. I have nothing to do with this. I don't know where it came from. It's nothing to do with me. Shifting that and seeing that perhaps you do have something to do with it, even though, of course, I think for the most part anyway, in my experience, it's not done deliberately. You have no idea what thoughts might be that you're acting on that might cause some disease, or you wouldn't do it. People don't do that deliberately. So whatever these thoughts are that are causing your heart and being reflected in this disease are undoubtedly ones you have no idea what they are. But you can find them if you want to. This takes a real shift, though. Because mostly, as we all know, we just like to get rid of the suffering. But what if the suffering was there for a purpose, such as to teach you how to become more loving? In that sense, disease is a teacher of love. Or as I put it in my books, disease offers a love teaching. That if we're willing to shift our perspective to the one Sai Baba is teaching us, we can discover what the thoughts are that have created this. We can discover these unloving thoughts because the disease itself will be a reflection or manifestation of the thoughts that have caused it. And I'll give you a few examples. If you have arthritis and experience it as crippling and painful, discover the thoughts that have a painful and crippling effect on you. If you have an allergy and describe its effect as being attacked, feeling like you're attacked from outside, discover how your thoughts are after you in some critical way. If your blood pressure is high and you sense it squeezing or pressuring you, look for any thoughts that feel pressuring. If you have a bad skin rash and sense it as irritated and angry, discover the irritable or angry thoughts that have become manifest as the rash. If you have clogged heart arteries and sense them as deprived and sad, determine how you are denying yourself in unloving ways. With cancer, discover how your experience of cancer attacking you is a mirror of how you're attacking yourself, such as with self-condemnation, self-loathing, anger, unforgiveness, or severe guilt or resentment. It can be difficult to do this because, again, the ego does not want to take responsibility here. In my experience, the most powerful love teachings that are offered by reflection, reaction, resound are in disease. If there's enough unlovingness of which you're unaware that's going on, disease will bring it to your attention if you shift your perspective to understanding that's why it's here. It's here for me, not against me. I had a quote here somewhere, but I can't find it. Which is basically, whatever happens is good for you. And I said, where is that? I was pretty sure I put it in here, but I can't seem to find it. But it's a good one. And no, I can't find it. Basically says, whatever happens to you happens for your own good. And that's true. Every experience that we have, really no matter what it is, whether it's the worst you can imagine or the very best, is here to show us a path to God. Whatever we react to by closing our hearts is the powerful teacher of how to release that. God is love, love is God. And so the path to knowing God, to knowing we are who Sai Baba says we are, is to purify our hearts. And the practice of reaction, reflection, resound is a very powerful way to do that. It will open your heart, it will undermine the ego, which is the reason we have difficulties anyway, and will pave the way to knowing who you really are. Sai Baba says about the ego, the man who is wrapped up as an ego cannot recognize God. When ego goes, God appears. So you may want to think a little less kindly perhaps about your ego, because it's the only reason that you're not realizing that you are who Sai Baba says you are. My beloved ones, you are my own self. It's the ego that says, oh no, I'm not God. No, it's not me. Here's the reason that you can use these teachings, because they will undermine the ego, and they will open your heart and purify it. So, when we learn to open our hearts to the aspects of ourselves that are reflected in the world, and to receive the love teaching of disease, rather than trying to attack and eliminate it, we purify our hearts. Once man, says Sai Baba, once man purifies his heart, you will find purity everywhere. The world outside is just a reflection of your heart. If you fill your heart with love, you will experience love everywhere. In my experience of talking about this, it generally evokes a lot of questions and discussion. So I wanted to leave time for any kind of responses that you might have, and I think there's another response that we're going to get first. Then we'll have time to talk about whatever you'd like to talk about, and perhaps if there are things that I didn't talk about you'd like me to, I'd be happy to.
Don't be afraid. This is an opportunity to say it the way it is, I guess.
How did you meet Swami?
It's a long story. Well, I won't do the whole thing. Anyway, I used to be a clinical psychologist, and I think it was in 76 or 77, I was leading a group therapy, and one of the people in there told a story about a man in India that he had witnessed giving oranges out to a large crowd from a small basket. And the oranges just kept coming. And I remembered that. Then, for some reason, of course, Sai Baba was the reason, I think it was 2 or 3 years later, I thought, well, who was that guy? What was he talking about? So I called him up and I asked him. He said, that was Sai Baba. And then I began to experience this, it's hard to know what to call it, a kind of love that is beyond words, that is beyond any kind of comprehension, that was so intense and so powerful that I could barely open to it at all in the beginning. And over a period of many months, I began to tolerate this consciousness, which very clear to me was Sai Baba. Though he didn't say, "Hi, I'm Sai Baba." But I knew who it was. And this consciousness that was divine love, as I came to know later, just kept working on it and working on it. And then in 1982, I was at a spiritual retreat, and an experience happened where I discovered I was not who I thought I was. I mean, the false self, or the ordinary ego self, thinks, well, I'm this body, I'm this mind, I do these things, I have these relationships, I know how to do this, and a whole lot of everyday dualistic world descriptions and labels. I had this experience of my heart opening to the kind of consciousness that Sai Baba had been showing me, and knowing I was not any of those things. I didn't know who I was, but I knew I was not this description that I thought of myself as having been before. And that was very powerful. Except I said, well, if I'm not that, who am I? And about 9 months later, again at a spiritual retreat, I had another experience in which Sai Baba showed me who I am. My identification with this ego, false self, disappeared, and there was only one. My ordinary self was gone. And I knew I was God. Not in any ego sense, because my ego was gone. In fact, the only way you can know God is when your ego is gone, as I was saying before. And I knew I had never been born, I would never die. The essence, this I, though there was no I there, this whatever had always been, would always be. And then I got a sign. It was a kind of, I forget what I called it at the time. It's kind of a signature of the energy that did all this. And then I had been to India by this time. Actually, it was 87. The only time I went to India was in 87. And I saw Sai Baba do the motion that he does when he creates things. I said, that's it. That was the motion. That was the signature of this energy. And I already knew it was Sai Baba, but that sort of confirmed it. So that, I think that will answer your question.
You've talked about love, and Bob Bazzoni talks about us being embodiments of love, and that's what we want to be. But sometimes we're around people, and we don't want it to be that way, but all they talk are like negativity, and it becomes an ongoing kind of phenomena. And you're a psychologist. I have a psychologist friend who's great at being one of the most negative individuals in the world. So, and you come into this all the time, so how do you handle this emotionally when you find yourself in this kind of a situation?
Well, the first thing is, of course, to deal with the reflection here, which is you see negativity out there. And you may have some specifics to it about specifically how the negativity is happening that you experience. Like he talks down to me and say, to pick one, I don't know what that's it, but let's say, how do I do to myself what I experience this person doing? How do I do that to me? As you can begin to tease that out and find out what it is that's causing your heart to this person. That's the first, and it needs to be actually the only step. If your heart then does not close, suppose you do the work necessary to figure out what the reflection is here. And you undo the ways that you're doing to yourself what this person seems to be doing. Then when you see that person again, if you healed it in you, your heart will not close to him because the reflection in him will be different. You will see that person literally differently. This is the most amazing thing about this process. If you heal the part of you that was reflected in somebody else, and you see them again, they're transformed. It's a real miracle. It's just a wonderful thing. So healing your own heart is the thing I close with here. What was that about? Once a man purifies his heart, he will find purity everywhere. It's true. It's not just a nice statement. It actually happens. And the way it happens is you purify it here, and since you are creating the world that you experience, that world will be a reflection of you. And if your heart is then open, the world will appear transformed.
This working?
That example that you gave, when you say purifying the heart, to me it seems like you forgive yourself. Is that what you're saying? Or maybe the example that you gave.
Yes.
When you say purify the heart, what you're saying is you forgive that part of yourself that is negative, that's down on yourself. And then, is that what you mean?
Yes, forgiveness can be a powerful part of this. Let's say you put yourself down in some way, and you recognize it, and then you say, part of that healing will be to learn how to say with truth, I forgive myself. You can't do it just as words. It has to be, some work usually has to be done first, so that your heart is no longer closed there. Then part of the opening or the flowering of the love that was trapped there is self-forgiveness. Forgiveness is a very powerful way of purifying the heart. Yes?
Yet in one of your books, you talked about this one lady who felt guilty about not being at her mother's side at the time of death because of her daughter's wedding, and she was instantaneously cured of her arthritis. You might want to talk about that aspect.
Well, I think that's actually a nice example of what this lady just brought up. Once it becomes clear and you forgive yourself, I think in that case it was for not being with her mother when she died. If you can acknowledge, yes, I did that, and I now can forgive myself because I've done the work to open my heart to myself. And that's sort of like the capper, so to speak. It's the final thing, I forgive. Very powerful. Forgiveness is always a heart opening. Yes?
John, can I just maybe would like to just, what kind of comes to heart, and I think what Dick was saying and what brings to mind, that it seems like whatever we do in the world, whatever job we get, whatever experience we have, whatever our assignment is not necessarily that we're good at it. It's probably more that we have something to learn. And I don't seem to bother me, no matter what it is, if you're a car dealer, if you're a teacher, or whatever it is, you've got that assignment in life for you to learn. The tendency is, though, we kind of think we're good at it, so we're going to teach the other guy what to do. But it's the reverse. I get a kick out of being in Chrysanthemum all these years. People wonder why around Baba everybody was doing this and doing that. Well, I think we all realize that he didn't need saints. He needed people to learn. And I know this for a fact. Hello. Every assignment that he gave you is because you were lousy at it. And I will use that word. We were so set up in our ego that we knew what he wanted. That is disaster. And I think that happens more in the world. Forget about Sai Baba. I think honestly in my heart, it's every assignment we get. If you're married, you're the husband, you're the father, it's the opportunity to be a loving father, a loving husband. It's the opportunity to be a loving car dealer, not me, who became one and said, car dealer's going to be run this way. And when you begin to open your heart and beloved the people who they are, it is amazing what happens. Total acceptance of that person. Their heart will open, and I'll guarantee you, they will do a job that is outstanding. How do I know this? Well, I've experienced a lot of that. By willing to accept that if I'm in an environment that I don't like, it is the self within me that put me there so I can love the self, which in turn will love them. No? Yes?
Thank you, Mom.
Okay? Need some okay from the teacher.
John, you mentioned how even disease is an opportunity. How would you say to a person who has been diagnosed with cancer, how would they now react to that diagnosis? Would they fight it, or would they surrender to its effects? And I have another question after that.
Well, if the person believes the medical model, they'll probably think you're crazy. It doesn't fit for them, and they may receive it as an assault. And so you need to be very careful here. A general thing always when you're talking about somebody else and something that you want to convey to them is to be sure that you can say whatever you have to say with your heart open. If you can't, then don't say it. So if you feel like, oh, I got something to really teach this person because they need it, probably not. Particularly with something as sensitive as disease and cancer in this case. You have to be very careful about how you bring something like this up. Otherwise, they'll receive it, as I said, as a lack of understanding, that you don't know what's going on, that you're telling them something that just doesn't make any sense, and they may feel abused. So you have to be very careful. If you sense the person might have some interest in this, you could bring it up and say, I have something that may not make much sense to you, but it makes sense to me, and if you're interested, I'll let you know what it is. But if you're not, fine. To go into very easily, very carefully, because something like this, people just, the ego part doesn't believe that, at least the medical model of understanding what disease is and how to heal. So you really have to be, if you can do it with love, and of course that's the easiest way to say it, if you can do it with love, fine.
Well, my real question is, with that understanding, how do we, if we are diagnosed with cancer, treat the subject? Do we fight it to overcome it? Or do we surrender to its effects and let whatever happens happen? It may kill us. Most likely, if it is a fatal form, it will.
Well, I don't think either of those two alternatives. The third alternative is, say, the cancer has come here to teach me something about love that I'm not getting, and it's taking a very powerful teacher for me to get it. So the first thing, and I go into this in more detail in the Power of Thoughts particularly, is the shift from thinking, this is here, not for me, it's against me, and I got to fight it, and if I lose, I die. That framework, which is the usual one, is the opposite of what I'm saying. As I've said maybe too many times, the ego won't buy it. It cannot believe that I should get some love teaching from cancer. If you can consider that, and even go ahead and do the treatments that you may want to do, medical model treatments, fine. If they take away all the symptoms, you may not be motivated to get the love teaching, so that would be one caution at least. If you want to go ahead and do whatever treatments have been recommended by your physician, fine. At the same time, you can consider the disease is here to teach me something about love that I'm not getting. And once you get that perspective, then you can go through the process I described in the Power of Thoughts and somewhat in the Purifying the Heart about how to get that teaching. But the crucial thing is the shift. This disease is here to teach me how to purify my heart more unconditionally than I have already.
I have a related question. I appreciate your answer, by the way. It's excellent. It has been my experience, unfortunately, recently, and with our own observance of what happened with Swami, is that at the end of life, we find that many of the people we know end up in serious illness situations where they're receiving medical attention for an extended period of time, which ultimately ends in their death. What is the function, then, of this experience? I know that many people will say, well, you were burning up karma and all that, but I strive for a more deeper understanding.
See if I can find some of those quotes again. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned about Swami too, in relationship to the suffering we thought he was doing, and maybe he was and maybe he wasn't. I'm not going to be one of them. But I can share an experience. In the first operation, if you remember a few years back, that was done in Brindavan, when he was operated on the hip. Well, I happened to be privileged to be there, and happened to be privileged to go in the house in the morning when he was just there after the hospital. And then a couple days later, he was preparing to go to Buddha party. And because there were so many people naturally around and worried about him, and there was just hectic in Bangalore and Vrindavan, and people wanted to see him, that he agreed to give a discourse. The crucial words that he said was the opening comments. The rest of the discourse was wonderful. He acknowledged the physicians, he teased them a little bit about things, but he said, quote, and I think it goes back, it drives in my heart constantly. He said, and remember, the avatar always does things for us. Everything he does, every word he says, every action he does is for us. He said, quote, his opening words when he came on the stage in Vrindavan, I did this to show you you are not the body. To me, that is the most important part of what he has done to show us in relation to his body. Everything he's done in his human body is to show us we are not the body. We are the Atma, because everything we talk about always goes back to this duality. I'm the body this, I'm the body that, I gotta fight this, I gotta fight that. It's tough. But I remember those words, strong to the point, I did this to show you you're not the body. I don't know if that helps or not, but it sure brought back an experience.
But it raises another question.
Let me respond.
Oh, yes, sir.
From my point of view first. As I talked about before, when you understand what the reflection is, you learn how to open your heart. that which you've been responded to before by closing your heart is transformed. This is the same. If you get the love teaching of a disease, the way you perceive it will be transformed. Fill your hearts with love, you will then be free of all afflictions, Sai Baba says. You may even thank the disease for the gift of love that it has enabled you to receive. So there's a shift here. It does not mean the disease is gone, although it may be. But you've received the gift that it has come to bring, just as somebody is transformed when your heart becomes open to them.
Again, I appreciate your answer. I think it is an excellent answer. But, and I don't disagree with that. But to what Bob mentioned regarding Swami, he has been in the past an example. His life is an example as to how we should live. And if that example is to be considered in all respects, then we should accept the medical treatment that comes at the end of life, even though it may not be successful. Do you have any comments on that? Because Swami obviously accepted about a month of medical treatment before his final moments.
Well, I touched on that a little bit earlier when I said you can accept medical treatment. Swami was doing something else, as Bob mentioned. I mean, he didn't need this teaching. But you can accept medical treatment. If it eliminates all the symptoms of the disease, you may have no motivation to receive the love teaching of the disease. That's the only caution I would have. It's fine. If you can do the kind of work I'm talking about, so you discover what the disease has come to teach you, fine. And if you're getting treatment, and it doesn't interfere with that, fine.
Very good. Thank you.
So, I'm curious to know what are the different books you've written and how are they different from each other?
Well, Swami continues to teach me, and so as my understanding has deepened, usually another book has come along. I'll share with you my process of writing books. Is that I don't write them. I'm not much of a writer, and I don't really enjoy writing that much. But Swami, in every case, would keep after me. I would stop, like in Purifying the Heart. I think I did at least 5 versions of that. And after each one, or perhaps during that, I'm through with this. This is too hard. I don't want to do it. And then somehow, and I actually know how, I'd find myself writing again. And so, Purifying the Heart was the first, and that was basically all I knew. Swami had given me these things. Apparently, he wanted me to write them in a book because he wouldn't let me not do it. So, and the same thing happened every time. And I finally get onto it and say, okay, I'll keep after it. And so they're all essentially about the same thing, but they hit little, let's say, different facets of the same process of purifying the heart. And so in each one, I've emphasized another area. It's all in purifying the heart. The others are sort of taking, as I said, an area and amplifying it and adding on to it more than I did in the first book.
Okay, if you don't mind, but mine are pretty simple, and that's what I'm trying to say in relationship to I share. They are simple. Once you want the answer, you've got to want the answer. Let me give you an example. It wasn't, a while back, about 3 years ago, when I first mentioned earlier about, I can't love others until I love myself. That next day, something happened because I wanted to know. And what happened was, my wife Barbara, as you know, was at home, and it was in the wintertime, it was raining, and I didn't want to leave her. We had somebody there, but I had to deliver something to LA. This is the next day after I got the message. I had this thing, and I had to get it to LA, and it was it was in the afternoon, heavy traffic, rain, and you know, first rain in California, driving is not too easy. Got down, came back, and then where I live, you come down one street from the freeway to get in and get another street and then turn quickly or turn. What I did, because I was in a hurry, it was late, the weather was bad, I came up this street, turned to the right, and ahead of me, I saw a car, and I said, boy, I can make it, I'm in a hurry. That's exactly what I said, boy, I can make it. And I went like that. But I didn't see another car that could have come out. I immediately saw, immediately it hit me. My mistake in driving could have caused the most horrific accident in Orange Grove that they've had ever. Not one car, 3 cars. Bang, how many people, how many deal? You can see the karma just shooting out of that, okay? That's what I saw. But I didn't get it. So I started questioning myself. That's the key to reflection, reaction, resound. This is one of the most current, heavy ones that I got, because that's a big message to learn to love yourself. And I said, wow, what grace. And what we do, oh, he saved me, he saved me. No, he showed me you've got something to learn. I didn't get it, but I didn't give up. I got home, we had dinner, I dove into it. I really did. I kept asking, Swami, what is it? What was closing my heart? And I speak that way to myself when I get into those things. And it went all night. And in the morning it came. Had I loved myself, I wouldn't have put anybody in that position. Simple, to the point, and yeah. And what has that done? I'll tell you this. I don't think I ever was a bad driver because I was trained by the best. But I'm a better driver. Because if I take an action, or if someone else takes an action, you can get mad at him, but you don't. You turn it around. And you love him. Thank you. If someone corrects you, you see that? Sometimes over the thank you. Thank you. That's what I do. I honestly do it. Because I go back to that moment. Yes, he saved me. But why? Because it was good for me, because I know after 37 years of over and over and over and over and over, it pays off. Take a moment. Reflect. Why did he put you? You can say that. Basically, you're putting yourself in a position which you don't like amongst all those people because it's giving you a chance to open your heart. And that example still burns. I hope it helped you a little bit. But take a moment when you leave. It doesn't have to be that dangerous. Anything. Anything. Just say why. But not because of them. And it's not what you think it is. That's the message. You've got to dive in. What is it that's closing your heart? That's the difficult one, isn't it? It's not a big picture. You've got to dive into what's inside. What is it that's closing your heart? Yes?
Yes. I want to read a bit of a quote here that fits that situation, which is, when you love yourselves, you love me. My beloved ones, you are my own self. All of them. When you loved yourself, when you could love all the swamis.
All of those people in that car, I don't know who they were, I don't know how many didn't it, but immediately that's what happened.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And if you don't think I come to that corner now and slow down all the time, oh boy, you bet. And it's constant. We're in this place, constant. But that's not the reason. Not just because I'm a good driver. It's because I love me, I love them, I love everybody, and that's the truth. It's really that.
Thank you.
Let me just say real quick while I have the mic. I have to laugh about the cars because where we live in these apartments, we're not too far from a car wash. and the owner loves Hummers and all sorts of cars. He's got a Bentley and all. And he likes to show off. Well, he also likes horns. So ambulance sounds, fire engine sounds, big truck honks, all that. Especially Sunday mornings at 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning. So I've gone over there over the years and said, please, would you know, people are scared or they worked all night and they're sleeping now and no response. He settled it down. And I love it, Dr. Goldwaith, what you said today. I'm laughing, Riley, because I'm sitting here chuckling to myself. I started going in and saying, okay, what is it that I'm disgusted with or rejecting about his honking those horns? And I realized that I have come to the point in my adult life where I be quiet when I need to go out sometimes and just make sounds. Whatever it is, it opens my heart and lets me cheer and be myself. And that man's way of doing it is different horn sounds. Well, there's certain ways I need to go and express that would live my life fuller. So thanks to your description this morning, for the first time in 18 years, I get what my reflection is from him honking those horns, and it's because I need to be me more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your books that have been divine gifts in our study circles. Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to ask you what your opinion is about hypnotherapy and its clinical uses. I know a lot of psychologists have been using it to remove phobias and blockages on the subconscious level. And I experienced it myself from a loving side doctor that in one session made a difference. And I'd love your input. Thank you.
I'm not exactly sure what you're asking me, whether I think it's a good technique to use. Or...
Yeah, if you've had experience or what you think about it. They started using it in hospitals to make patients allow themselves to heal, to get the work done on a subconscious level versus therapy or trying to work outside of that.
I've never practiced hypnotherapy. What I could say is this, that actually I don't believe there's a subconscious. There's an unawareness. People talk about a subconscious as if it were a thing. There's really no evidence that I know of that says that it's a thing. What it is we deceive ourselves and we repress things so that we're unaware of them. And if those can be brought to our attention, much in the same way that, let's say, how you're having an unloving thought that's being reflected back to you that you're unaware of, if it can bring you awareness of something that you're unaware of, and then you can accept it. Acceptance is always first. Yes, this is in me or part of me, or I do this, whatever the acceptance phrase would be that fits. Then you can learn to do the work, to let go of what's closing your heart so that it opens to whatever this was that was uncovered in the hypnotherapy. That's how I would understand how it could be useful in the ways that I'm talking about here.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who can give maybe something that they're having trouble with in relationship, opening their heart? Maybe Dr. John. It's an opportunity because I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. It really, you have to ask. You have to ask your teacher. If we believe, some here don't, doesn't matter who. You ask, I want to know. I want the answer. Is it? Because we talk about this, we talk about that, but what is it that even you don't know? Ask him what the step is. I'll show you. About opening the heart, it really works. I got another fun.
Something's going to happen. And how do I deal with, because to an extent, I think if I come down with cancer, it's my fault. I need to take responsibility. I need to open my heart. But there's also a normal aging process, and I have to be careful between, really looking at myself and understanding this is part of the aging process too, to kind of accept growing older. So I'm going to throw this out to you. Everybody here is dealing with the same thing here too.
I would say your reaction to growing older, whatever it is, the body not doing this or that as well as it used to, is a reflection. It doesn't.
I don't like it.
So I look at it. It's the best medicine, someone said. So I look at whatever the symptoms you're talking about, look at them the same way we've talked about here, and see, what's this here to teach me? It doesn't mean that those symptoms are going to go away, but you will receive a love teaching from them about greater acceptance, greater opening your heart to yourself as you are.
Is it necessary to suffer or to work hard to realize something? Is it necessary to suffer to burn karma, or is it a stage of evolution until we realize who we are?
Some diseases are clearly karmic. That doesn't mean that you're being punished. It's just a reflection of actions that you've taken in the past, in this life, or past lives. So it's important to understand karma is not a punishment. It's just what you earned, in a way. Then to look at it, it may present you, and usually will, it depends on what kind of karma it is we're talking about. Quote, bad karma, I think here. Things that are producing suffering. The way I understand suffering is that it's God's way of motivating us to receive the love teaching of infirmities, affliction, and diseases. So in this sense, shifting your view, this suffering is awful, I don't want it, which is probably true, of course, to, okay, this is pushing me to do something that apparently I found very hard to do because this is what's happening, I'm suffering. And if you can then do the kind of work we've talked about, so that you shift your perspective and your heart opens to whatever it is that was involved here, that was the cause of the suffering, and the suffering has served its purpose. And you will no longer experience it as suffering, even if, let's say, the symptomatology remains the same. It probably won't, even if it does.
The microphone is rather close here, and I want to use that little device. I have a very inept, very totally idiotic question, and that is, I observed over many decades that when I wake up in the morning, a day rolls off which is so similar to the previous one in so many ways, even if I go through hell and divorces and whatever. But it is, I face always the same idiotic face in the mirror. That's one of the things. The other thing is that it starts really good, and as the day progresses, all the little PS which comes in leaves its mark, and at the end I have to work super hard to go decent and pain-free to bed, and then I don't know what it is. Do you, as a psychologist, know what happens in that time where we sleep? There must be something horrible going on in that time. So maybe you can throw from your point of view a little bit something into that. Can you?
Well, my understanding of what goes on, that may be something to work with, is we can take whatever is left. Sometimes there may be things that are left as you wake up, as you're talking about. Maybe from dreams, maybe in the hypnagogic layer, which is between wake and sleep. And so you can look at that and again say, how is this a reflection of me? This is my creation that have been created by dreams or thoughts in some way that I'm not aware of. And it's being presented to me, and it's not a mistake. Nothing is ever a mistake. It's always exactly what you need. And again, shifting to how is this here for me? There's something here that I need to get. And so I look at it in the same way as all these other reflections, so to speak. I found the quote I was looking for earlier, which might apply right here. So Baba says, all is the gift of God. Every experience given by God is good. Through sincere and loving inquiry, that good will be found in every experience. And what I've been talking about a lot is how you find a good in every experience, why it has come, and why at some point you may really thank it, even though initially you react with terror, heartache, suffering, and all the rest. Eventually, if you want to take the perspective that Sai Baba is presenting, that will be transformed, and you will be glad that it happened.
In the early days in Buddha Party, how did he start teaching? Singing on the streets. He starts small, then he goes bigger and bigger and bigger. In relation to his teachings, he picks a subject and he works on it in his talks. And he'll go to the next one, and he'll go to the next one. And there's been a series in Satyasai Speaks on his teachings in relationship. I remember there was a segment of time where he said there is no right or wrong. There is no right and there is no wrong. How can there be? Everything is God. That's duality. Another danger. Anytime you make a judgment, you step right into the trap. Right into it is the biggest bear trap there is. Right smack into it. When you've decided you know what's right and wrong, you have failed completely. And you've got to begin to accept that. Your heart's closed. Then you go to the next step. Okay, I got it. No right or wrong. Then he started talking about judgment. These are discourses. These are discourses. He said, first, you got to start judgments. The simplest way is you talk bad to somebody, you hurt somebody's feelings. So you got to start with that one. Keep your mouth shut. Keep quiet. Silence. If you're judging, that's first step. Then the next step is get it from there. At least you're not criticizing anybody, but you're still judging. That is tough. To get it out of the mind. Get it out of the mind. But you know, maybe I am a simple guy. I know that. Because I've been told that. I like it. Because when you're simple, you don't think so much. I have a little exercise now that still happens, and I begin to think about something, or maybe I just go like this. No, get it down there. Just bring it down there. Judgment goes. You're not going to talk bad. It happens. But you've got to want to do it. And I scream that out because you cannot get out of the box until you want to step out of the box. And God, He's the witness. We know that. Swami says that himself. I watch. You're in trouble? Yes, yes, yes. He's the greatest master at saying yes, yes, yes. How many times you've been around Swami who said, you got the answer here? He'll say yes, yes. That is the worst answer you want to hear from him. Yes, yes, yes. Because you've already decided what you want to do. He's the witness. He'll let you do it. You got to learn it. Go ahead. Asking Satya Sai Baba when you're here in person a question is really hard. Really hard because your mind always has got an answer. He'll always give you that answer. Very rarely. And I think I can speak for some friends here. If you truly can ask God, even today, in any manner or form, a real way of asking a question. You have to be open in your heart to want the answer. And you got to beg for it. You got to ask for it. Once you get into the habit, sometimes it comes too fast. Whoa! But now you can laugh. I'm really trying to speak from really good experiences. Because Swami says, quote, "Who are you to talk about me?" We can't. But he says, talk about your experiences. Because they're good for you. And I remember this distinctly. He said, they're good for you. That finger comes back. And when I talk about Swami, I am so much in love with him. At the same time, I can love all of you more too. That's what's fun about life. When you can begin to want to get out of the box. We used that last time, didn't we? But one step, that's all it takes. Next time, a little easier. After a while, you're asking for it. And then when it comes, you really laugh because it really comes quick. And that's what's happening now. I think all of us can share. With Swami's gone, what is it, 2 weeks into this month, 2 years, Swami left his form. But that's when the opportunity is. Now that he's gone from the form, we're getting more answers now than we did before. He's everywhere at the same time. And he'll answer us immediately all the time. But be careful. If you think you're good at what you're doing, be careful. That speaks for me too, right here. I hope these experiences, from my point of view, I just don't, my heart really goes out to all of us that I know constantly. Just ask just a little. The response is so magnificent. Ask and remember it's good for you. And you're scared. I love this other one, if I may say. Phyllis Crystal taught a lot of us. Surrender, trust, and accept. Now this game we play all the time with each other. We say, do you trust God, whoever your teacher is? Everybody says, oh yeah. Surrender to him? Of course. Will you accept anything he gives you right now? Total silence. Try it with yourself. Automatically you get quiet because we want to hear what he's going to give us before we accept it. That's the most difficult part. Trust, surrender, accept. And that's where the word comes in, it's good for us. If you're willing to accept what's good for you, it'll come constantly, and you know what? It'll always be good. God cannot give bad. He can't do that. God doesn't give bad. How can he? He looks at good as bad as the same. A good guy, a bad guy, he doesn't judge. Never. Never. I will holler that. Swami doesn't judge. He might say, makes a little mistake, something like that, but it doesn't judge. Love is constant. That's even, love is a word, it's not a good word. It's something, it's the best word we know. But God is constant. He's not this, he's not that. The universe is constant. Everything is constant. It never changes, but it's ever changing. But I just read a discourse, just picked one out of the book that was shown to me. There was nothing but darkness. And then all of this play has started. How many times? They're finding more universes out there than what we even know. And when we get caught up in poor old me, poor old Bob, poor old Bob, poor old soul, the rest of the universe doesn't understand me. Yeah, laugh. That's good. I like the stage. It's my ego. Still got time for John, not me.
No, she wanna ask the question. Is this okay to ask question? Yes. Please. Go ahead. Stand up, please.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Lisa. This is the first time to join here. And I'm probably a very simple person, but maybe I might be very complicated because always, I think in the mind. And the problem is right now, when I got pregnant, one lady keep coming, early in the morning, rang the bell 20 times, always she visit me. But I try to be nice to her. I never say, oh, please don't come. Just let her in, let her have a tea. then I start dilating. I headed to the bed rest, and she keeps coming in. Are you okay? But I couldn't say to her not to come in. So anyway, she came in my house. But after I delivered, my baby was premature. She had a little problem at the beginning. So I started getting so mad at her in my mind, and I tried to be nice, to think like Swami said, nice way to her. But in my mind, I couldn't do that. I got so mad, I tried to smile, but my face was kind of like a demon. And then she starts spreading all the rumors. I'm the bad person because she cared about me, but she never called me back or something like that. But I was mad, so I sent a text message, but I tried not to get close to her after I had a baby. And then she starts spreading all the rumors in the town, and everybody said I'm the bad person. But Swami said it's much better to be quiet. But I don't know, of course, maybe it comes from my previous life, or I don't know why. But I don't know, sometimes Swami say we have to be quiet, or should I start explaining to the people what happened, or very, I don't know, because I'm kind of a beginner. So I don't know how I can solve this problem.
With what words would you describe this woman?
I get the feeling that she's jealous, very strong.
Okay, she's jealous.
I get a feeling she's jealous a lot in many. Yes, I get a feeling. I can explain well.
Are there any other words that would describe her behavior to you?
Too pushy?
Pushy?
Yeah, maybe it could be my mirror.
Pushy? She sounds as though she's rather talkative as well.
Mm-hmm.
Any other words that you might judge her as being?
Mm-hmm. That's 2 words.
Okay. What you can do here is, again, look at the reflection. Is there anything that you're jealous of? Is there anything any way that you treat yourself in a pushy way?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think so.
Well, I think so too, yes. Because otherwise you wouldn't react to her as strongly as you have. So if you take the understanding that what I'm reacting to in this person and what she's done and so on, in some way I am doing these things to myself. Probably not in the same way that she does them, but in some way you do them the same, say, basic process, but probably with different content, different areas, different ways. So in some way you're treating yourself the way you experience her treating you. So if you find what that is, and you don't like it, so I think probably you're not liking it when you do it to you, when you're not quite aware of it as yet. When you become aware of that, then you can do the work necessary to let go of these judgments that are causing you difficulty in some way in your life, which you'll discover. And then I think you'll find that this woman either won't bother you anymore, either she won't be in your life anymore, or if she is, you'll see her differently, the way I talked about earlier, that when you shift here, the world out there will shift. She will seem different, and you'll respond to her in a different way, because she won't actually appear the same.
So in that case, if I change inside of me, I don't need to say anything. It's much better to, be silent. And then if I change it inside of me, automatically my outside of the world is going to be changed. I don't know how I can explain. I'm sorry, my English is not so good.
Yes, as I said earlier, it's always important, I think, if you want to say something in these kinds of situations, if you can say it with your heart open, it's probably fine. assuming you're correct that your heart is open. Sometimes we fool ourselves about that. But if you can't, don't say anything. In addition, as right now, I don't think you could talk to her with your heart open because these things, these reactions have closed. So once you release that, I think you'll know what to do. It'll be clear to you if there's anything to do, then maybe nothing to do after that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks so much.
I'd like to add, that was beautiful. See, you were so willing to answer his question of those two things. It just, you had to dive deep a little bit. You asked for it, but you said it. I admire that. And it's really, I think you showed us that it's really not that hard. You were willing to look in and said the two words. You answered it. We didn't tell you. He didn't tell you. You answered the thing that you have to work on. Well, beautiful. Good example, wouldn't you say, John? Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I think we're getting to that time. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question. My name is Mark. This is my first time here. My father, also a physician, brought me today. I think the first half I figured out of my question, so I'm going to ask the second part. So I'm an emergency room doctor, and my example is probably like anyone else's, horns and people bothering us and things. But I've had a lot of nights recently, especially last night working the night shift in the emergency room and take care of maybe 15 people. And of those, perhaps 12 are drunk, on drugs, very loud, boisterous, and annoying. And I know now, for me, why that upsets me, because probably at some level I think I'm loud, obnoxious, and annoying. And so I've learned from the lesson today. So I know now when I go into my next, because I left this morning feeling quite anxious and irritated and confused about why I felt so negative towards people last night. But I guess my question is, once you do that reflection and you realize in those drunk, intoxicated people on drugs, why they're, how they're reflecting back on me, then what in that relationship as a physician can I do with a person like that? If I only have 2 or 3 hours, and they'll probably be drunk and intoxicated throughout that entire point, so other than helping myself to be more open to them, is there something additionally I could be doing in that interaction with another human that, they've come to the emergency room to see me for some reason, but I know in my mind there's probably not much I can do for them. So by not being annoyed with them, what else could I do for them other than being more loving and open to them? Or is there anything else?
Other than?
Is there anything else?
That's the same thing that you can do for them, just being more open and loving. So love is what heals. Yes, you have medical expertise and you have that level of confidence, I'm sure. But the presence you bring, I think, is really the truly most healing thing that we can do for one another. So I wouldn't put that in kind of an afterthought, as I think you did just now. If there's anything, I'm not quite sure what's closing your heart there as you react to these drunk or drugged people. There's some kind of judgment or something that closes your heart there. So I recommend that you identify what that is and see how that applies to you. I assume you're not drunk and a drug user, but the descriptive word that closes your heart that you apply to them, in some way you're doing with yourself. Not in the same particular way they're doing it, but if you judge them as, let's say, irresponsible, how do I treat myself in an irresponsible way? Would be a way to get a mirror there, if that were the word. So find out what the words are that you're using, that judge, and then close your heart to these people. And then find out, how do I do this to myself in my own way? And again, if you heal that, you'll be able to bring to them perhaps the greatest gift that we, as I said a moment ago, we can give each other, which is love. That is the greatest gift.
I'd like to add just, we have in the audience Dr. Cobb, who spoke up here a while back, and what brings me to mind, and I think a lot of times we don't even know what opened our heart, but his transition, and I'm going to speak for you, Dr. Cobb, of your examples of changing your whole practice to the word wellness. And now you're hearing it all the time, but that had to be opening your heart to something that I think sometimes you don't even know, and that's okay. Because if you made the transition and you're more open and you're loving, and you don't have to know. But if you don't, you got to ask. But I love what brought back to listening to him, and now I'll say, Dr. Cobb here, all of that talk about wellness, which you practice, and how your practice right here in Tustin turned around. I mean, it was all about that, the same thing, reflection, reaction, resound. At least to your patients, I don't know about you, but your essence does it, I'll tell you, for me. Quite a guy. You too, quite a guy. What was happening to Swami? No one knew when he was going to pass, and we were worried that he was sick, and we all thought he was going to heal, on and on and on. There was a book, the old book of Baba, and it was discourses that he had made. Quite a few back, and there was a marker in the book. You know how those coincidences are that they were saying. So I generally read a half an hour in the morning, something. So I opened it up, and there it was, a very short chapter, the last 3 pages. He said, in the formless, God comes in a form, because that's the easiest for us in the body to recognize. We need a form to recognize. Then comes the formless. How do we devote it? And then we become very devoted to the form, and we want to give him flowers, and we want to do these things, and we get very devoted. Then he says, what happens in the formless? And he used the most simplest example. He said, you take a chair, you look it up in the dictionary, and it describes a chair. But he also said, let's say you've never seen a chair. So you pick it up in the dictionary and you read about the chair. So when you go and see a chair, you recognize it as a chair. Now that's the proof the chair is also formless. We reverse it. We see a chair, and then we describe it, but that's not how it works. It really doesn't. Everything is formless. But then we experience the form. But everything is in the formless. So he went on to say, that simple, simple way, I love the teachings of all the masters, they're really simple. It's good for me, love all, serve all. Then he went on to say, in our devotion for the form, how do you devote to the formless? And he used it again as a flower. We know a flower is a form and a formless. Okay. And I'm paraphrasing it naturally, but it wasn't very long. It was only a very short couple pages.